back to the IRHSP series. Today, we are going to start working on doing our veining and our base blushing for little Christopher. But I was really excited, so before we get started doing that, I wanted to show you we got in our new thinner, which I'm super excited about. I found this one on Amazon. It did take a little bit longer to get because it was on back order, but I am super excited about this. I cannot wait to start painting with this. I have tried it myself during the IRHSP class and fell in love with this. So this is the Eco House Extra Mild Citrus Thinner. It is super sweet smelling. Somebody had mentioned in a previous comment that they didn't have the best of luck and they got headaches because of the smell. So fair warning, this stuff does have a scent to it, but it's a citrus scent and it is very mild, and I really enjoyed it. But if you're very sensitive to smells, I would say you gotta choose your evil. Do you want to have smelling a little bit more like a traditional thinner, or do you want it to smell more like a fruit? So I decided I'm gonna go for this one. Besides, it is a very nice product. I'm really excited to start this. But we're not gonna get started using that quite yet. We are going to move into doing our veins. So let's get started. So you can see where we've already completed. We've done some texture rounds, model rounds. We've used another texture round in addition to doing some blue undertones. So today, we're going to start off with veining. And in order to do that, I wanted to introduce you to the IRHSP veins and undertones. So if you're one of those that have a hard time of mixing that perfect color, this is the route to go. This is a really beautiful color. It's that nice blue-green color, perfect for veining. I will show you what it looks like. I'm going to pick up a little bit of our color. I'm gonna go about yay. And remember, when you're using the pigments and you're using your liquid thin, you don't need to use as much. It's almost a 1-to-1 ratio. So I'll add a few drops of our liquid thin, and then we're going to mix this up. You want your veins to be translucent. You don't want to have them too bold, because then what's going to happen, it's going to look kind of fakey. So I like to have my veins a little bit more on the lighter side, and then if I need to touch them up, I can build them up from there. This is a little different than when we were doing our texture and our models. Before, when we had created that, we had used equal parts of our pigment with the liquid thin with a few drops of our thinner, and we wanted that pigment to kind of run on the plate. This time you want to see the pigment is going to be a little bit more suspended when we're working with this. If you feel like this is going to be too dark, you can always add a little bit more liquid thin. I would probably use the liquid thin versus the thinner because I want it to have a little bit more pigment. And then what you're going to need is you're going to need a script liner. I personally love this script liner. This one is the Gold Sable, I believe it is. This is the 5. The other one I will use is this guy, and I really like this guy too, but you can definitely see the difference between these two. This is the Fine Line by Winstonia. I might be pronouncing that wrong, so apologize if that is the case. This one's going to be a lot more narrow, and this one's going to be a lot more wider. I personally will use this sparingly and doing this one with more detail, where when I'm doing my standard veining, I want a little bit wider of my script brush, so that way the veins are a little bit more natural. I'm going to show you how I create my veins myself. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to test my pigment to see, okay, do I have too much of a pigment in there? Do I need to thin it out a little bit more with that liquid thin, or do I need more pigment? So I usually will take my own veins and I will take the pigment and draw it on my skin. Then I'll tap it out so I can see how close is it to my natural skin. And that is pretty darn close. Look at how nicely the coloring matches natural vein appearance. Now, of course, everybody has their own unique coloring and it may vary from person to person, but I am really loving this vein color that IRHSP came out with. So you can see how perfect it is. That is actually this paint and not my vein. So it worked out very nicely. So that's a good color. The next thing I like to use is I like to use paper towels. You can use sponges for this, or you can use like cotton rounds. And I use this because for me personally, when I'm using a paper towel, this is allowing me to blend out those veins without having dye transfer by using a sponge. Oftentimes when I had used the sponge in the past to blend those veins out, what would happen is it would transfer that pigment from the area that we just picked up onto the doll in another area. So I will stick with a paper towel because I have more consistent results with. However, if you do use your sponges or use a cotton round, you want to very gently tap out the edges of your veining, not necessarily the entire thing. Now we're going to take our lovely little script liner, we're going to pick up our pigment, and we're going to start with the back of the head. There are some main arteries and veins that you will see more prominent on the head and the arms and the legs. These are the standard ones that I will typically put on my babies, and then I will adjust them as I go. I will start with the back of the neck, and I will do this light pressure. We're gonna drag that brush in kind of a swiggly motion, and don't worry if it breaks doesn't like perfectly connect. That's all right. And bring that down, and I'm gonna go like that. I may need to thin it out just a little bit. If it gets too thin like that, it's gonna look like it's been drawn on, so don't worry about having it real thin. You want it to be a little bit more on the wider side so it is a little bit more softer in appearance. And I'm using the side of my brush, keeping your fingers further back from the very tip of it. The closer your hands are to the tip of your bristles, the more control you're gonna have. We want the application of our pigment to be a little bit more jagged and a little wider. So that's why I'm holding my fingers back a little bit further so it has a better glide to it. And then we're gonna go on through here. I will start with one section. Once I get my first veining down, I'm gonna fold my paper towel in half, and then I'm going to start with the area that I laid down first. Think of veining as dyeing the kit more so than painting the kit because it's so pigmented. You're gonna press down and do a little twist of your paper towel just to blur out those veins, and we're going to have those just be real softly transparent and kind of hidden underneath our layers. The more you twist, the more it's going to blur out those edges, and sometimes I will do a little bit less or a little bit more depending on the vein itself. If I find I don't like a vein, I'll just quickly wipe it off the best I can. You can see this is where we're at. See how it's already picked up the dye through here or the pigment through here? If you were on that sponge, it's very easily transferred back onto your kit. So that's why I like using a paper towel. It seems to absorb that pigment a little bit better and have less problems with dye transfer. All right, that is looking really good. Now that we got that first area done, you can see how they are super transparent and just very lightly sitting under the surface of the skin. If you want them more vivid, then go ahead and make your pigment a little bit stronger and use less of your liquid thin. I personally like to have it a little bit more translucent. Like I said, it glides more nicer when I have a little bit more on there. So now that we've got that first section done, I'm gonna do the second section, and I'm almost mirroring what I've already done. So I'm starting with the back of the head, making that medium pressure with my brush, bringing it around. I'm not gonna worry if I have broken lines or not. and bringing it right into the face. With these, you're just basically going to have the branches go from the neck towards the face. All right, we're gonna go ahead and use our paper towel here, doing a little twisting motion just to blur that out again. If I have a little bit of a heavy hand with my pigment and maybe I have too much on there, and when I go to use my paper towel, that dye transfer happens, it's not a big deal. Go ahead and just very carefully dab it off. Or you can leave it on. It's really entirely up to you. I noticed I was a little heavy-handed here, so I picked it up initially by just doing a rocking motion with my paper towel, and then I go over with my twisting motion. Okay, we're gonna go to the top of the head, and I'm gonna do this kind of arcing through here. We're gonna bring this down. You can see by having the liquid thin, that really helps the glide. And I work in sections because it can stain the vinyl so quickly that it makes it really difficult for these darker colors to be able to be manipulated at all. But if you wanted to and you're confident, you could do the whole head and then go back. But it also allows you to be able to handle the head without fear of smudging those lines. You can see I'm kind of hanging onto the ears right here. And I got a little too much there. There we go. Do that little bit of twisting motion. I'm gonna blur this out a little bit. I like my veining super subtle and soft. I don't like them to be very evident. I just want them to have a hint of coloring coming through. We're gonna start on the side of the head, and I'm gonna work from the neck up. I'm gonna go from behind the ear. I'm gonna go around the top of the ear into the face. And when you're lifting your brush, you want to remember to lift that brush so you have a very wispy end. You don't want a real blunt end. And this is where, if you have a lighter pressure, you can create these kind of micro veins on the side of the face. I'm going to add a little bit larger one through here. I'm going to go through here, and then I'm going to go in through here where I'm kind of starting off and branching off from there. All right, those are some cool looking veins. I really like those. Starting with the back. Got a little heavy-handed there. So when I was talking about using your cosmetic wedge to just soften the edges a little bit, that's where if you were to take your cosmetic wedge and just kind of tap around the edges of it, you could do that. But again, like I said, I don't like doing that because dye transfer can happen so easily, and I don't like that particular look. When do you do your veining is entirely up to you. I do it kind of in the middle of doing my layers, so that way I've got a nice base of my texture and my coloring down, but I still have the ability to build on top of that, so those veins will kind of dissipate underneath the layers so they look a little more natural. Okay. That is looking good. And I'm gonna go ahead and do real soft pressure right around these areas. Okay, going on, that looks nice. Now we're going to mirror this on this side. For the sake of time, I will go ahead and do this side of the face on my own time. So for you guys, you're just mimicking what we already done on this side onto the opposite side. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to work on doing the veining for the legs. Again, veining is one of those things that it's going to be something that you get creative with. Take a look at your own veins. You can pull up some photos and videos on the internet. Just search the anatomy of veining or phlebotomy or anatomy, things of that nature, and you'll be able to find some really good examples. But as for the legs, we're going to do the same concept, but instead of having our branching going upwards, the arms and the legs, you're going to have your branching going down this direction. So that way the blood flow will go down to the foot and then circulate back up the leg. If you look at photos, you'll find that it almost has parallel lines that go down and then branch off. You'll find that the femoral vein runs from the inner thigh back down through the side, around the back of the ankle, and then down into the foot. When I'm painting that particular vein, I don't go right over the creases because you'll find that it looks disruptive in your lines and looks more drawn on. So I will either go just underneath the lining, depending on the kit. Every leg is a little different. Or I will start just at the back of the leg here and then bring it down through here. The other thing I'll do is I'll start that vein underneath, almost right perpendicular to your heel, and go right in through here, which I'm going to do on this guy. I'm going to bring it right into the crease of the leg, but not all the way. Keeping that branching in mind, I'm going to go and bring my branching out to the sides just to give it an initial start. We're going to continue on with that femoral vein going down the back of the leg. I'm going to go around the heel, and you're going to go over those creases. So you got to be real careful that you're getting into the crease. Otherwise, it'll look broken and drawn on. Draw this around and under the foot. Continue making branches on that femoral vein. Bringing that down. Usually you'll see one in the heel area. And I have one running down the side of the foot into that toe. I got a little heavy-handed right up through here. That's okay. Taking our paper towel again, just like we did with the head, we're going to press down and do a little twisting motion to absorb a majority of that pigment and to blur the edges. I want it super faint, so you almost have to look for it to notice it. Once you have all your layers down, it just looks so natural. All of a sudden it'll catch your eye when you turn the leg in certain directions. It's not going to be something that's going to be standing out in your face and there are all the veins. I like it to be a little bit more softer. Everyone's a little different on their style, so you got to do what's right for you. With having gotten heavy-handed up here, I'm going to press down, trying to absorb most of that pigment. So you can see it's already absorbed into my paper towel. And to avoid having any of that dye transfer happening, I'm just going to fold my paper towel in a opposite direction and then keep pressing and doing a little twisting, and turn your paper towel if needed, so that way you don't have any problems with that dye transfer. I'm going to start just with this top area of the leg until I'm happy with how it looks. Moving down into the foot, I should say. Twist and twist and twist. You can see how nicely that looks. Very soft. It's not crazy bold or anything like that. It doesn't look drawn on. It's just going to be really soft under the surface of those layers of colors to give it more of that dimension. So we're going to move on to the outer side of the leg, and I will usually do one right by the thigh but closer towards the back of the leg, doing that same kind of squiggling with a light pressure of your script brush, dragging those branches off to the side. I'm gonna let that sit while I continue on. Basically, you're gonna take the branching you did on this side and you're gonna mimic it on the opposite side. So you're gonna bring it down that leg around the back of the heel to the top of the foot. And how much you do is entirely up to you. And if it breaks like that, it's not a big deal, because once you do your blending, it's going to break or look broken anyways. Careful not to get too thin around that ankle. To the top of the foot a little bit, down onto the side. And then we're going to work on doing our branching. And see how it got separated where that crease is? That's where it gets a little tricky. So you gotta make sure that you are getting in those areas pretty good. All right, before I continue on that, I don't like how that got a little bold. So I'm gonna wipe that off. Let's try that again. There, much better. And I'm dragging that down. With the top of the foot, I will show you how I do the branching for that, but I'm just gonna do a little bit right through there. I'm gonna go in around the heel, bring that down. Continue on. That looks pretty good. I think I'll be good with that. I'm gonna start doing our blending or blurring with our paper towel with the initial portion that we laid down. That will have allowed it to kind of stained that vinyl a little bit. Here we go. You just want it real soft. Got a little heavy-handed with this one. Pick up some of that. Once I've gotten a majority of that pigment absorbed, then go in and do my twisting to break that up even more. Don't worry about how you hold the leg because you've already done the other side. It's not going to matter because you've already blended it in so well. And I'm going to leave a little bit more underneath that ankle through there, and I'm kind of liking that. All right, now we're going to continue on working on doing our veins on the top of the foot. What I'll do here is make sure I don't have too much on my brush. From where we had left off on our veining from the side of the foot, I'm gonna do a little bit of a vein that leads down between each toe and branch off of that. You look up actual veins, it looks almost like a U with lines going straight down. I'm gonna get my paper towel and absorb some of that, and then go in and do a little bit of that twisting. I want it virtually disappearing and only popping through here and there, so you can see how natural that looks. It's not something that's going to be shocking, but as you turn the limb around and it hits the light, it'll come through the different layers that we've put down, so it looks really nice and subtle and natural and not looking like it's been drawn on or really, really evident. So that looks good. If you want, you can go through and add more of your veins if you want to give it a little extra something, if you feel like it's too light. I will oftentimes do one on the top of the leg through here, and you're making a V almost, remembering to do your branching going in a downward fashion. So you can see I'm just doing a couple of light ones right through there. Absorb that and do a little twisting motion. If you want these to be a little bit more evident, do less of your twisting so that you can see them a little better. But I still don't want them where you're going to have your eye drawn to them. I want it to just naturally come upon the vein and, oh, look at, there's a vein, there's a vein. That looks good. And that out a little bit more. Okay, that's plenty for me. If you like to see a lot of veining, do a lot of veining. If you like to see it more soft and light, then do it soft and light. Again, this is something that you got to do what's right for you and what you like to see. let you go ahead and continue on the other leg at your own pace. For sake of time, again, I'm only going to do one arm and one leg. The one thing I will go back and do is I'll show you a little bit more on how I do some veining on the face itself. That's the one thing I did not mention. With the arms, we are going to follow the same rule of thumb as we did with the leg, having an inside vein that will run down through the wrist into the palm of the hand, and then you're going to have an outside vein. I usually start with the top, working my way down. So I'm going to start underneath these creases and go right up to the crease through here. And I don't like that. Got a little heavy-handed. I'm going to start up through here, go down around the elbow, and then I'm going to start doing my branching. And when I'm doing my branching, I usually will stagger them. So I don't want it to look like it's completely even. You could even do some tiny other branches that kind of arc off to some of these other ones. We're going to do this underside. I don't really like that one. With the palm of the hand, that one's tricky because of the creases. I will do where it leads up between each finger in that manner. And we'll say that's about good. I'm going to go through and start dabbing and then twisting, working my way down. Turning my towel over as needed. Soften that area out. I got really heavy-handed through there. And the hand. This is where you gotta get into those creases really well. You don't want it to settle in the crease. If you're having trouble getting in the crease, that's where you can go in and use like a micro tool and do some blending that way. So you don't want to leave it sitting pooled in the crease, because then it will look kind of fakey. Looks good. Gonna go on to the opposite side. I usually will start just under the shoulder. And how far down and all of that is entirely up to you. And I'm holding it too far to the end. Trying to keep that feather touch here. And as I'm doing these other small ones, you can get those ones a little thinner because you're doing those almost like a micro vein, and then go in, blot that out, and then twist it, leaving those other ones a little bit more behind. That looks good. I'm gonna bring my vein more so on the side than right in the center. That way it'll go around that wrist bone or the joint right through there. Bring it around to the hand, going right down into the finger, bringing it off to the side through there. Blotting that out. I know it feels like you are almost erasing everything that you just put down, but again, it's going to come back to how much of that twisting motion you're doing that's blurring the edges or blurring it. So do less of your twisting so that you don't have that happen. Blur that out. I'm going to do that one. I'm going to do another vein right on the inside portion of the arm. And I'll do one by that wrist that leads into the crease of the thumb. This one will go that way. I'll let that sit. Now this is where I basically am taking each branch and connecting it to the next branch when it comes to the fingers. You're almost doing that U shape like we did on the foot. Well, essentially you are, but you're creating the U as branching versus just drawing a U. That looks good. And then once we get done with the arm, I will show you how I do my veining on the face. And this is a very basic application of my veining. I oftentimes will go in and do a lot more detailing and more micro veins and all of that, but we're not going to get into heavy detailed with this guy because I just want to show you how the Irresistible's paint line works and what some of their colors look like when you use them. Okay, a little bit too much on the wrist there. And that is good. I like that. Very soft, subtle. You'll see them pop through here or there. Almost invisible. I really like that. Or we're gonna move on to the face. Alrighty, the video had cut off during my recording, so I apologize for that. Doing that micro veining on the side. Once I get it blotted, then I'm gonna just do a little twisting just to blur it a tiny bit. That looks good. Now, with keeping in mind the vein that goes up through here by the ear, we're going to bring this around, and that's where you can do some branching going up towards the face and no longer going down. So I'm going to take this vein and bring this around. And do just something like that. Blot that out. And depending on whether or not you're going to be rooting or not, that's where maybe you want to focus on doing more veining on the face and less focus on doing the veining on the head because it's going to be covered with hair anyways, but still accentuating those areas around the neck where you might see those veining coming through the areas that you didn't root. Okay, that looks good. We're gonna go right through by the nostrils and bring that veining down. Same on this side. Blot that out. And then we're going to twist. Got a little close to the nostril, so I'll go in with that little micro tool and do a little blending with that to get closer in those areas. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. If you want to go on and do more veining or more details, you certainly can, but I wouldn't go too in depth with your details because we still have some layers of color to put down. If you're doing details, they may get lost underneath those layers if they're real fine details. So I usually will hold off on doing those until I get just about done with everything. And then I'll go back and fine tune some of the micro veins and all of those things. All right, guys, so that is your veining in a wrap. So for you guys at home, you want to finish your other arm and your other leg. So remembering when you're doing your wider veins and you want them to be longer and flowing type of a vein, hold your fingers back further and keep the pressure medium and drag it out. When you're doing more of the detailed veins or the micro veins like we just did, hold your fingers closer to the end and that'll give you more stability. So that's my 2 cents on that. I was going to do our base blushing, but because of the length of the video that we're already at, I'm going to save that for the next segment and I'll try to get that uploaded next week. For those of you that have been following along, I really appreciate you watching and I really do love your feedback, especially when you guys message me and show me pictures of your progress, all that. It's so much fun to see what you guys are working on and get to know you guys. Make sure to put your comments below. Let me know what you're thinking of the videos. Even for those that maybe don't care for the videos, let me know how I can improve or what you're looking to have videos done on so that I can make sure I have a little bit more variety. For those of you that are new, thanks for tuning in. And make sure you guys join our channel where we have 3 different tiers that are very affordable that will have different benefits for each level. I really do appreciate all your guys' support and I appreciate you coming in. Make sure you join. So thank you again for watching, you guys. I so appreciate it. I appreciate all your support. I look forward to seeing you guys next week and we will work on the base blushing for that. But before we go, we'll quick put down on our little color map here what we did. Again for watching, guys. I will see you all again very soon. Bye-bye.